So we are working our way through the parables of grace on our way towards Easter. And this week we looked at the parable of the Good Samaritan, a story that, if we're honest here, is probably a little too familiar and comfortable to us. It's tough for a story like this to scandalize us the way that it was meant to. But I love this story, and in particular the setup to the story. There's this man who comes to Jesus and asks, "What must I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus says, "Well, what do you think?" The man quotes Jesus to Jesus. He says, "Love God, love people." And Jesus says, "Right, that's it. Do that, and you'll find what you're looking for." But the man presses, and he goes back to Jesus, and he says, "Okay, sure, but who exactly is my neighbor?" And the question here isn't really who is my neighbor, is it? The question is, who is not my neighbor? Like, who do I not have to love? Who do I not have to include? Who do I not have to expand my humanity out to invite into my story? And if I'm being honest here, this is a question that I've heard before. It's a question that I've really been asked before and that I've asked myself. Because the more that I talk about grace and the more that I become encaptured by this story of a God who would go to any length possible to save all things, the more that I have people who want to come back to me and say, "Yeah, but who exactly is not included in that all?" And I might not be a proper universalist because I can't imagine a good God who forces us to stay if all we really want is to leave. And I think the scriptures struggle with this idea that some of us might actually choose to walk away from life and to discard love, to move away from everything that sustains us and holds us together in the universe. But it seems to be that some of us do. And yet on the other side of that, I have very little imagination left for a God who does not go to every length possible in the universe to save everything that possibly can be saved. Humans and creation and mud and dirt and stars and every molecule that has been made, God is at work healing, redeeming, and repairing all things. And yet here, in a story like this, the story isn't really about just who's my neighbor, who's not. It's really about whether we believe the story the way that Jesus does. Because Jesus is working very hard in his parables to expand our imagination of God's grace, and sometimes we are working very hard on the other side to close it all back down. Like, who is not included? Who do I not have to love? Who can I safely assume is on the outside, and who can I treat as if they are on the inside? And the parables of Jesus are meant to constantly push us to reevaluate those boundaries. To realize that the categories of us and them, inside and outside, don't really matter for us anymore. That as soon as we are in the story, as soon as we've been welcomed into grace, that those categories become meaningless. And all that we are left with is everyone who is loved. And so yes, that means the person who's sitting beside you. Yes, it means the person on the other side of the bus from you. Yes, it means that family member who's difficult, that person who's hurt you, that person whose mistakes and failures don't look like yours, that person who you don't see as part of your us. All of those people are now part of the all that God is working to redeem and repair and heal and save. And our story of participation in that is that we get to carry that story out into the people we encounter, to love them well, to welcome them in, to set any kind of judgment or categories or boxes aside, and simply trust that when we love, we are doing that in the model of the God who loves all things.